As part of his G20 meetings tomorrow, President Trump will sit down face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin. At Trump's side will be his national security advisor, H.R. McMaster. But had things gone differently, it would have been Michael Flynn. Flynn was Trump's first national security advisor. But soon after taking the job, he was fired for lying about his contacts with Russian officials, and admitted he worked on behalf of the Turkish government. He's now the linchpin of a massive federal investigation, and every single Trump-Russia conspiracy theory. It's been a remarkable fall from grace for a man who, until recently, was a highly respected 3-star general, a man who President Obama put in charge of one of the nation's biggest intelligence operations, the Defense Intelligence Agency, or DIA. Vice News spoke with more than a dozen people who knew and worked with Flynn during that time to try to answer a question many of them still ask themselves. How did the career of a celebrated commander collapse so quickly?
There were 2 camps in DIA when I arrived. One were those that were firmly aligned behind Mike Flynn, and those that weren't. And I think those communities were very pronounced.
Is that unusual to see, that kind of?
That was highly unusual, you bet. And ultimately, Mike Flynn bears the responsibility for that.
Doug Wise spent 28 years in the CIA. He retired last year.
This is a 9mm submachine gun. Some of the Shia extremists had captured some of these weapons, and we in turn recaptured them.
In 2014, he was detailed to the Defense Intelligence Agency, or DIA, to help clean up a mess. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who'd been running the agency for 2 years, had fallen out of favor with the Obama administration. Flynn was on his way out, his reputation marred, his military career effectively over.
This was the pinnacle of a military intelligence officer's career. I mean, this was an extraordinary opportunity to be the director of the largest defense intelligence enterprise in the Defense Department.
It was an opportunity Flynn had earned after nearly a decade as one of America's most accomplished intelligence officers.
Last night in Iraq, United States military forces killed the terrorists al-Zarqawi.
Maybe his greatest achievement? The 2006 raid on the compound of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq. It had taken months of work to track down Zarqawi. At the time, Flynn was the head of intelligence for the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC.
JSOC is the rule breaker of the military. They're like the elite athletes of the service. And Mike Flynn excelled in that community. And he also excelled because he had a very tight relationship with his boss.
That boss, Stanley McChrystal, gave Flynn the leeway to do what it took in pursuit of his obsession, getting the right information into the right people's hands so they could kill the bad guy. Flynn's JSOC teams ignored the rules they thought were counterproductive. They shared intel with anyone they felt needed it. And it worked.
Mike Flynn helped build that machine, and that machine, in many ways, is what won the conflict for a few years in Iraq, because it just ripped the heart out of the insurgency.
People who knew Flynn then describe a man of 2 reputations. The diligent soldier who toiled quietly behind the scenes, studying intelligence reports 18 hours a day without break. And the brash, confident JSOC vet who wasn't afraid to let others know when he was right, and they were wrong. In 2010, while on active duty in Afghanistan, that second Flynn emerged when he published a paper with a think tank that bashed the intelligence community for failing to provide useful information to warriors in the field. The paper made Flynn's reputation as a revolutionary thinker, but it also made him a lot of enemies, especially in the CIA.
I thought the criticism was very unfair. And, and I think Mike Flynn had the seniority and the experience to know that.
I mean, he was right.
Absolutely. Doctrinally, he was correct. But it was a little bit frustrating when Mike Flynn, in the face of our investment, in the face of our commitment, that he would be so critical.
It was a pattern that would recur over the rest of Flynn's career. Good idea, bad execution. Flynn and McChrystal had hoped to remake the war effort in Afghanistan, but McChrystal soon lost his job following a scandalous article in Rolling Stone. Flynn was sent to Washington. It was a frustrating time for him. He was disillusioned with the DC bureaucracy, and they were wary of him. When Obama gave him the chance to run DIA, he had big changes he wanted to make.
Mr. Secretary, I just want to say thanks to you for this terrific opportunity.
And like at JSOC, he was ready to run over anything or anyone who got in his way. Jim Sisko served in Afghanistan with Flynn and later helped him prepare for the transition to DIA.
DIA, some of the other 3-letter agencies, are political machines that are self-licking ice cream cones for politicians, for the National Security Council, and he wanted to push it out. He wanted to make it relevant. He wanted to make it support the warfighter.
Flynn had an aggressive plan to reorganize the agency, to push analysts out of their bunkers in Washington and closer to the action. Joshua Manning was an intelligence analyst at DIA when Flynn started.
There were a lot of people who were excited, like me, that he was coming in and was going to shake things up a little bit. He was known as someone that was, going to try and put people out in the field and try and really get people out of their chairs.
But Flynn's JSOC style of leadership didn't go over so well in Washington.
Pretty quickly after he started, we got these indicators that things weren't going to work out quite like we thought. So it was things like, let's have civilians do PT with the military. Let's have a dress code. Whether that was his idea or not, it was implemented when he got there. It definitely affected morale. When people came to work, they weren't happy. They were stressed out. It became a difficult place to work.
In the fall of 2012, Flynn was at a crossroads. It was clear his revolution at DIA wasn't taking hold, and he was losing patience.
Mike Flynn is now catapulted into Washington. He's got to deal with Congress. He's got to deal with a lot of stakeholders, and it's a fundamentally different ballgame than he's played for the first 3 decades of his career.
That October, Flynn spoke at a major intelligence conference in Orlando. He had a message for people in the bureaucracy he felt were standing in his way.
Many who resist change say they can wait you out. How are you going to accelerate their execution?
Move them or fire them.
One focus of his ire, David Shedd, a career CIA official and his number 2.
There was cases where, Mike Flynn would put out something and David Shedd, who's supposed to be, his deputy, backing the guy up, the minute he left the room would be like, we're not going to do that.
Shedd declined to comment. But even Cisco, who still admires Flynn, says that he suspected early on that Flynn might turn out to be his own worst enemy.
It really was a gut feeling that this isn't going to go well.
Do you think he didn't have that gut feeling?
I know that he knew the challenges ahead of him, but when you're driven by a belief, you believe that you can do anything. And especially when you have 3 stars on your shoulder, that's huge.
In the spring of 2014, Flynn was fired. People sometimes ask, how did Mike Flynn change so much? How did he go from the disciplined warrior who helped build the modern-day special forces to a man who mingled recklessly with the Russians and omitted key information from his security forms? A man who signed on to Donald Trump's moonshot presidential campaign, tweeted out Islamophobic sentiments and fake news, and did this at the Republican National Convention.
Lock her up. That's right. If I did a tenth of what she did, I would be in jail today. Crooked Hillary Clinton, leave this race now.
The answer is that Flynn didn't change, while the world around him did. Flynn was always someone with his own way of doing things, his own single-minded belief about the right way to manage national security. In the field, those were strengths. In Washington, they were weaknesses. He didn't adjust, and the experience left him frustrated and bitter. As he later wrote, "In the end, I was pissed, but knew that I had maintained my integrity. I would not change a lick how I operate. Our country has too much at stake." Some of his allies told Vice he vowed to get revenge. They used terms like comeback strategy and eye for an eye. With Trump, he'd get that chance.
He had lived his life inside the cloistered world of the intelligence community and the military, part of that, and so he had access to this information and a particular worldview and a particular proximity to the enemy for so long that I think he felt almost obligated to share that and tell Americans, don't you know what's really going on in the world?
Flynn declined to speak to Vice News for this story, but he's told friends that he regrets the speech at the RNC, that he was new to politics, got caught up in his passions, in the moment.
I have a picture of Mike Flynn in my head, and that picture is not what's being portrayed in the media.
What about the emotions in that speech? Did that surprise you? Lock her up.
I never saw, that side of him, but, politics is politics. It does things to people that you wouldn't expect it to.
Not everyone is so willing to let Flynn off the hook, especially for his private business dealings with foreigners.
If you look at his background, you look at the assignments he had, you look at the seniority, and then you try to reconcile all that with his post-military behavior. And it's a real enigma and confusing. And in many respects, I have to tell you, it's very disappointing. Because I just wouldn't have expected that kind of behavior out of Mike Flynn.
It's not just he should have known, but in fact, he would have known.
He would have known. It would have been very clear to him.
What do you think Flynn's legacy is?
Unfortunately, he's going to be viewed as the shortest tenured national security advisor, the guy who got fired. There's no rebranding Mike Flynn, which is a shame.